Hello students, let's continue our chapter 6, World after 1945. Yesterday, we studied about the United Nations Charter and the Cold War between America and Russia, the two superpowers, and why Cold War was the reasons of the Cold War. One wanted to be more powerful than the other one. Now, let's study about the world distributed among army group. And now what is it? So please turn the page and come on page 40. The world distributed among army group. One of the most important aspects of the conflict of ideology was mutual distrust and sense of doubt on the intention of the rival group. So students, what was the important cause aspect for the conflict, for the war was ideology crisis, and that was the mutual distrust and the sense of doubt. They did not trust one another. They had the doubt. They were suspicious about the other nation. And that was on whom? On the rival group. Owing to fear born out of mutual distrust and doubts, both the powers established their own military bases. Both the powers, which are these powers we are talking about, students? Of course, America and Russia. Led and inspired by America, Western democratic countries on the North Atlantic Ocean established a military organization which is known as NATO, NATO. The full form of NATO is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Underline the student. Underline the sentence, students. NATO, which stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization, in April 1949. Students, who had established this? Led and inspired by America. The Western democratic countries of the North Atlantic Ocean had established NATO. Thereafter, to protect southeastern countries from the onslaught on the Soviet Union communism, America and England established one more military organization in 1945. So in 1945, one more military organization they had established, and that was named as SEATO, South Eastern Asiatic Treaty Organization. SEATO, SEATO, stands for South Eastern Asiatic Treaty Organization. So students, one was in 1949, that was led by America. The Western democratic countries established North Atlantic Ocean, the Western democratic countries on the North Atlantic Ocean established a military organization, and which was known as NATO, whereas America and England came together, and one more treaty was organized, military organization was established, and that was SEATO, which was in 1945. One more military organization, CENTO, SCNTO, stands for Central Asia Treaty Organization, was established in Middle Eastern countries under the leadership and inspiration of England. So students, this is the third one. The first one was NATO, second one was in 1945, SEATO, and now CENTO, which was the Central Asia Treaty Organization, was established in Middle Eastern countries under the leadership and inspiration of England. Here, various Arab countries joined CENTO. Various Arab countries joined because it was in the Middle Eastern countries. Okay? And later on, America took over its leadership. So you see how these army groups have been distributed into three groups, organizations: NATO, SEATO, and CENTO. You will have to learn the full forms by heart. Now, one is established with the help of the Soviet Union, that is onslaught of the, no, sorry, one is with the help of America and England, they established ch-6. One is the organization which was established in the Middle Eastern countries, which is known as SINTO, and one is NATO, which was in 1949. Now, let's study about the disarmament, nuclear weapon creation and its application. Students, we know that yesterday only we studied about the Cold War. Let's something about that. And now we have also seen the struggle, how much money has been spent in the First World War and the Second World War. How many people had lost their lives due to disarmaments and the bomb blasts and many other things. So now, what is that? Armament, disarmament, nuclear weapon creation and its application. What are they talking about? The Cold War, which was meant for dominance over the world, gave rise to fierce competition among superpowers, America and Russia. And for the sake of dominance, armament race was given high priority. In order to show their supremacy, what was the students? The armament race to create or to produce more armament was given the high priority. America had used atom bomb for the first time on two cities of Japan, namely Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That was in 1945. We know the students how it has started. America had first put the bomb on which country? Japan's Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which was in August and in 1945. This way, America proved its supremacy. Within next 4 years, the Soviet Union to prove its capacity of making atom bomb by conducting a nuclear test. See students, the Cold War was between these two nations, America and Soviet Union. America is trying to show its supremacy by creating the armaments. And what was created? The bomb blast. Atom bomb was created and it was blasted on Japan's Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Later on, Soviet Union too wants to prove its capacity by making the atom bomb, by conducting a nuclear test. And this created a power balance between the superpowers. Like as America created, so also Russia, Soviet Union, and it was balanced, okay? But then America declared blockade of the communist Cuba, which was on southeast. To defend Cuba against possible attacks of America, the Soviet Union sent ships loaded with nuclear missiles in the Caribbean Sea. Now you see the students, what is happening? The America is declaring the blockade on the communist Cuba. Russia also is a communist country, and so Russia comes forward to help. What does the Russia does? Now Cuba, which was on the southeast, to defend Cuba against the possible attacks of America, the Soviet Union sends the ships loaded with nuclear missiles in the Caribbean Sea. Underline that, students, and remember this. This is an important question which is asked in the exam. Both the superpowers threaten each other to use nuclear weapons. Now that they had created the armaments, weapons, nuclear weapons, and so they are threatening with what, students? With the nuclear weapons. They threaten each other to use nuclear weapons. The world was almost on the verge of nuclear war. The world was already on the verge of nuclear war, about to have the wars again. Finally, leaders of America and Soviet Union had a talk on the hotline. America and Soviet Union, the leaders of America and Soviet Union, they had the talk on hotline for the first time. The Soviet Union decided to withdraw its ships, and America decided to curb nuclear missiles aimed towards Cuba. Both of them decided something, and what was the decision, students? America says, we will also curb the nuclear missiles which we have aimed towards Cuba, and we will not now show any other power over Cuba. And so also Soviet Union, they also take back the armaments. They decided to withdraw the ships and ships which they had sent on the Caribbean Sea. Now, what happened, students? The whole episode is known as the Cuban Crisis. You are asking the exam for the 2 marks the question about the Cuban Crisis. So you will have to mention about right from what we talked about the Cold War, and how these two powers trying to show themselves as the superpowers. America declaring blockade on the communist Cuba, Soviet Union trying to help with the nuclear weapons, both of them having the talk, withdrawing their ships as well as the missiles. This episode is known as the Cuban Crisis. This episode is very important episode in the world politics. It begins communication between two superpowers. It begins communication between two superpowers. Which are the superpower, students? We have been talking about America and Soviet Union, that is Russia. This incident is important towards the process of disarmament of nuclear weapons. The entire Cuban crisis is considered as the beginning of the end of the Cold War. In this way, the Cold War, which was starting between America and Russia, is stopping over there. It's having the end over here. It's putting end over here by having this Cuban crisis. And so therefore this entire Cuban crisis is considered as the beginning of the end of the Cuban War. They are going to have full stop over there to the Cold War. But then, let's see ahead. Students, remember the question about the Cuban crisis, which is asked in the exam. Also, yesterday we studied about the Cold War. We know the two nations which are there, America and Russia. How is it getting end now? With the Cuban crisis, this is considered very much in the world politics as an important episode, because this was the end for the Cold War. Sorry. America and Soviet Union and Britain agreed on maintaining control over nuclear production, experiment and proliferation. Now students, underline America, Russia and Britain, they agreed on maintaining the control over nuclear production, as they had also given the full stop to they had ended the Cold War. This agreement is known as Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Underline that. This agreement is known as what? Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. France, of course, refused to sign the treaty. These are the 4 again superpowers. We know that. And so what happens? France is not agreeing to sign the treaty. China also conducted a nuclear test in 1964 and refused to sign the treaty. So along with France, also China. This treaty imposed ban on conducting a nuclear test in open atmosphere. And of course, except Communist China, the other 4 already, that is, permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, possessing the veto power. We know in veto power, we have studied about the veto power, and the main were America, Russia, France, and England, that is Britain. So possessing the veto power over here, what happened? 4 of them already permanent members of the United Nations of the Security Council agreed to this. And now, apart from nuclear weapons and missiles, the superpowers have also developed chemical and biological weapons. These weapons of mass destruction can kill millions of people without damaging any materialistic wealth. People would die miserably while suffering from various diseases because of these lethal weapons. So students, what happens? You know, we have seen the destruction part in the First and the Second World War. And so now the weapons that have been created, what they could do, they also were developed in the chemical and biological weapons, they would destruct or kill the millions of people without damaging any materialistic wealth. For us, the life is more important, because what type of weapons they were, students? They were the lethal weapons. Now, during these decades, many important and far-fetching changes took place in international politics. So, during these decades, which decade, students, we are talking about? The decade of the Cold War, the end of the Cold War, and again coming to that agreement of saying no to the creating of the new armaments and all weapons. So, what happens? During these decades, many important and far-reaching changes took place in international politics. Owing to many reasons, the Cold War among superpowers also ended, and so nuclear ban treaty helped in this concern. So, nuclear ban treaty. Okay. India has always welcomed this treaty, but it is always a supporter of disarmament. India has welcomed this treaty, but always on a supporter of disarmament. Indians would not give support to create the new armaments and weapons. The world will be always in danger until the disarmament of lethal weapons is not done. So students, what is that? The world will be always in danger. Why, students? India always welcome this treaty, and what is that? The world will be always in danger until this disarmament of lethal weapons is not done. Okay, so over here we are finishing about the disarmament, armament and nuclear weapon. In this, the important question is all about the Cuban Crisis. Also, you should know about the treaty which is being banned, how India is always supporting this nuclear ban treaty. Okay. So students, over here we stop the class. Tomorrow we shall study about the rise of the independent nations of Asia, also the rise of the independent nations of Africa, and the non-aligned movement. Non-aligned movement again is an important question. Okay, I will stop the class over here.